Let's talk childhood trauma in an eating disorder. Yes, so today I wanted to talk to you about the role of the parent or the unavailable parent as a reason, a cause, and also a maintaining factor in eating disorders. You've maybe heard about a theory about the role of a parent in eating disorders, as in that there could be an unavailable parent or something with the parents or the family structure that has an influence on eating disorders. Whether it's that it is one of the underlying, why is it like shining in my eye? Underlying causes of an eating disorder, or something that keeps the eating disorder like in a prolonged state. There are a lot of different theories about that. And actually in the clinic where I went to for 2 years, which is not like an internal clinic, but it's what's that called? Ambulant clinic. So you just go there and go see a therapist, but it's specialized in eating disorders. And there we had like a special family psychologist, therapist, I don't know. But this person specifically looked at the family structures to see if something within the family structure contributed to the eating disorder and how to fix it. For our family, I have no idea if the therapist eventually found something or not. I have no idea. It was not clear to me, but we've had multiple conversations. But anyways, I came up with a theory myself because I've been doing some internal reflection for over the past few years, and recently I came to realize certain structures in our family, and I wanted to talk to you about this because it's not only in my family, but it's a little bit more something like general going on, and it has to do with attachment styles, and I'm sure you've heard of them before. So you've probably heard about the difference between secured attachment styles and insecure attachment styles, like avoidant attachment, or what's it called, anxious attachment style. And I'm not going to talk specifically about those attachment styles. You can look them up if you want. There's a lot of videos about them as well. I just think that they're pretty specific on one hand. On the other hand, they're pretty broad. Like they can in some way relate to everyone, right? But at the same time, they're pretty very specific. Like it has to be a parent who has never been available for you or whatever. But yeah, so for me, I did not really recognize myself in one of those categories, but I did recognize my parents in a way that they are talking about it's also called childhood neglect, which means that emotional neglect in this case, that the parent does not give you the emotional needs that you need in a certain moment. So for example, if you're sad and you're going as a child, specifically as a child, and you're going to your caretaker and you're like crying, or you're like showing some way that you're upset, and the caretaker is just very unresponsive to that, or they're very negative about it, so they kind of like downplay it, like stop being so whiny, like don't be such a baby, or like why are you crying over such a little thing, like, they don't acknowledge your emotions, or they do acknowledge it, but they do not like respond to it in a way. So for example, if you're back to the crying, if you're crying and Actually, what you want is like for the caretaker to do something. Let's say you're crying because there is a scary movie on the TV or something and someone dies, I don't know, and you're like crying like, I don't want to see this movie, and the caretaker is going to be like, oh, well, if they don't acknowledge it, it's like, well, why are you crying? It's just a movie, don't be stupid, like it's not real life. Why are you making such a big deal about this, so that's, they don't acknowledge it. And if they do acknowledge it but they do not like respond to it, they are like, oh yes, it's true, like it's very uncomfortable movie, but we're just gonna watch it and sit through it. And they're not gonna like how to say, they're not going to like talk to you about how to deal with this emotion, or how that it's all right to have the emotion and how to deal with it. They're like kind of a little bit absent in that way, that they do not provide the support that you need in that moment to deal with that emotion. In another way, which is a little bit less directly related to emotions, there's other physical emotional needs, such as if you're hungry, and this is a very big thing which I came to realize during my eating disorder, that we have not learned as a child, at least not in most Western countries, I would say, to be aware of our bodily sensations at one hand, but more specifically that we did not learn to respond to them. Because, well, if you go to school, you always have this very strict timetable, right? You go to kindergarten and they have this board with, we are going to do this today, and there's not usually a time in there, but there is always a specific thing. So for example, 10 a.m. or is it 10 a.m.? Yeah, 10 a.m. we're gonna have fruit break, we're gonna eat an apple or something, and 12 a.m. you're going back home for lunch, there's a lunch break, and then 3 p.m. you have another break, for example, I don't know, and then 4 p.m. and 6 p.m. and whatever. But in between those breaks, if you're hungry and you're going to the teacher and you're like, hey, I'm hungry, and you're a child in this, you're a kindergarten, okay? Your teacher is going to say, yeah, well, it's not 10 a.m. yet, or it's not 12 a.m. yet, so we are not going to eat now. What does that say? That says that tells the child that you should not listen to your cues. You should not listen to your body sensations. You should look at the time, at the clock, and depending on what the clock says, you're gonna eat or not. So that is also a way that parents or caretakers can neglect emotional or needs or physical needs of a child. And what are you gonna do if for your whole life your caretaker did not provide you with sufficient emotional support, or they did not give you a lot of attention, but there's still this need, this unfulfilled need. Like in the attachment theory, they say that you have the avoidant. This is like, sorry. In the theory about attachment, I believe there is a theory that people who have emotionally unavailable parents or caretakers will kind of shut down because they learn to not express emotions, so they will just avoid it because they know that it's like not, or they're anxious about expressing your emotions, in case of the avoidant attachment style. But there's also instances, and that is a theory about eating disorder related to the parents and caretakers in childhood, is that they will use the eating disorder as a cry for attention, basically. So when is the the parent going to pay attention to a child? Well, usually when the child is sick, right? Because in that case, a parent does care enough to help the child. Also, a sickness, an illness is something very real. You can see it. Like an emotion is something vague. It's like a very abstract thing, right? It is very difficult to handle that, and especially if the parent themselves have not learned that, or have had an emotionally unavailable parent themselves. They have not learned how to deal with that themselves. They cannot deal with their children showing emotions either. But if the child is sick, it's very real. You can see it, right? And especially if you have an eating disorder, it is very real. You can see your child is not eating, or maybe you can see your child is eating, but physically something is wrong or not going as planned, at least. Maybe the doctor is even telling you that something is wrong, and if the doctor is saying so, well, then it must be true, Emotions, you can say me you're sad, but well, that's your problem. I'm not gonna deal with that. But if there's a chance that you might die because you have such severe underweight, well, then the alarm bells are starting to go off, and yes, they will give you attention. Not the attention that you would like have wanted as a child, obviously, because it's not emotional attention, but they still have it's still a way to fill your need. So an eating disorder in that way can be a tool or a way to gain attention from the parent that is so much needed, because the child had been neglected for a long time. That is a theory. Okay, I'm not saying it's going on for you right now. It's just a theory, and I want to discuss it here because it can be very real. It is also, for me, in my case, the therapists talked to me about this as well, and they said, yeah, because you are the middle child. We see a lot of middle children who do not get attention from their parent, because it's kind of like what I would call the middle child syndrome. You have 3 kids, and you have the eldest one, which was the first one, which is going to school first, and then middle school, and then high school and university. That's very a new thing, and the caretakers are going to be focusing on that, like, oh, we want it to go well, and the child must do good in school and whatever. And then we have the middle child. No, they just follow the first child, so we already know what's going to happen. And then the youngest child is like, well, you know how it is, it's you have this stereotypical image of the youngest child as kind of like a spoiled, like, mother's child or father's child or whatever, or caretaker's child. I don't know. It's like the youngest, and we need to, it's like kind of like our precious little baby, they somehow get a lot of attention as well, like, because I don't know exactly why. I'm not a parent, but I can figure that maybe it's because it's your last child or whatever. I don't know. There can be tons of reasons, but this theory states that the middle child does not get as much attention as the other 2 childs, and that an eating disorder may therefore develop, not necessarily as the sole cause. It's not necessarily the sole cause for an eating disorder to develop. I want you to understand that there is a lot going on at the same time that can cause altogether for an eating disorder to start, and it does not necessarily have to be at the beginning that is the reason, but maybe along the way you will find that, oh, right now, and this is all unconscious, of course, right now that I am sick, and now that I have to go to the hospital and whatever, and to the dietitian and see therapy and whatever, my mother or father or caretaker is actually paying so much attention to me. And this is unconscious, of course, but then this sudden attention can lead It can become a maintaining factor for the eating disorder. It can be a factor in a role in your comfort zone. So it is one of the things that contribute to your comfort zone. Your comfort zone now, one of the things in your comfort zone is that your caretaker, or the ones that you craved so much attention for years, is now giving you that attention. And whether or not you're consciously thinking this way, it might be a reason for you to think, well, I want to stay in this situation, because if I recover and I am completely healthy again, my parents will not care about me anymore. That is how we can think then, because then they will, well, like the danger, the threat, the harm is gone, and then they will focus on the other children again, or they will be like, well, she will, or he will, or they will figure it out. They will live their lives and they will survive, I don't have to do it. So it can become a maintaining factor, and it's important to deal with this. Not only because we want to recover from eating disorder, but also because if we do not deal with it properly, and we do recover from the eating disorder in a physical way, so meaning that you have gained sufficient amount of weight to function normally in your body, but you did not mentally battle the mental psychological problems that can be the cause or be a piece of the puzzle that caused your eating disorder, this will either be a very big chance, will create a big chance that you relapse in the future, or it will manifest in another form. It will manifest in another psychological issue. And that can be anything, like maybe OCD or I don't know, name it. It can literally be anything, as long as it fulfills your needs, fulfills your needs, your psychological needs, the problems that are still there, that you did not solve, that you did not face, maybe out of fear. And that is very understandable, because it is scary. And especially if you're in this comfort zone, right? What we talked about in my other previous video. But we still want to tackle this problem, and you can tackle this problem. I have created a few steps. I'm not really good at creating steps because, I'm very detailed and stuff, but let's just stick with it. So the first thing that I recommend you do is recognize this tendency of you and your parents, and this pattern that is going on in your family, maybe, that you have this need, or that you actually very much like the fact that you get so much attention from your caretaker. For me, for example, I realized, I remember clearly this moment when I was in the car with my mother, because my mother would always drive me to the clinic, in the beginning at least. And I asked her if she wanted to do that for me, because I said I'm afraid. I feel more comfortable if a caretaker is coming with me to the clinic. So they would. And I remember that whenever we were in the car together with the two of us, I had such good conversations with my mother at that time, and I felt like so blessed that I could have these moments. Because whenever I am alone with my mother, like one-on-one, there's such a different dynamic than when we are home, or even if we are home one-on-one, it's still the same as normal. But if we are gone, if we go on a city trip together or whatever, if we do something together out of the house, there is a different dynamic between me and my mother. That's what I realized back then, and I really liked that, because I could for once have like a very light-hearted conversation with my mother, and she would also engage more in that conversation, right? Normally, if we are home, she's pretty like absent-minded, like very much involved in her own world. But when we were together in that car, and she would really listen to me, and she would like say things and like give advice and talk about things very lively. So I recognized that, and it helped me to recognize that, because then when you recognize it and you can accept it, then it means that you can do something about it. Because if you do not recognize it, well, either it is because it's not going on for you at this moment, or you just do not yet have realized that it is like that. And then if you don't realize that, you cannot take action, right? Because you don't know what to take action about. So recognizing this tendency of yours, which is usually unconscious, when you realize it, then it becomes conscious, and then you can do something about it. So once you've recognized this pattern, you can examine reality. And with that, I mean that, well, okay, you've seen this pattern, and maybe you think it is this way. Maybe you think, well, it is this because when I was still a healthy kid, they would not give me as much attention as I needed. Well, then you have to like really ask yourself, like, is that really true? Is it really that if I'm not sick, that they will not care for me, or that they do not give me the things that I need from them, not the attention? They are not as available for me as I would want or need. And maybe it is, maybe it's not. Like, the point is, it can also be just in your head, right? It can also be that we have created this illusion for ourselves. So it's really important that you also objectively examine reality. And maybe you can also look at your siblings. Like, do they have the same interactions with your parents, the same way you experience them? Like, do your parents not, or are they not as available? Are they not that available for your siblings as well? If you have siblings, of course. If you don't have siblings, or they're not home, then you cannot see that. And maybe you can even talk to your siblings about this if you feel comfortable, and if you think that your siblings will be open for that, because it can be that your siblings experience the same thing as you, but because they have been raised by emotionally unavailable parents, they have become emotionally unavailable themselves, and they cannot talk about it, or they do not feel comfortable talking about it because it's about emotions and stuff. You don't want to do that. Or they might simply not have thought about it that way. So only do that if you feel comfortable and you think your siblings will be open to that as well. So if you realized that, okay, it is true, and even if you don't know it's true, well, you can still try, right? Then you have start look for ways in which you can meet your own needs without your caretakers without your caretakers being involved in this, so that you can provide your own needs for yourself. Or maybe there is a friend, maybe you have a best friend, or just a friend who you know that if you I'm sorry, my English is really not on point today. Maybe you have this friend that if you talk to them, they are really open to what you're saying. Maybe you really feel heard, like they really listen to you and try to understand you and try to like give you what you need out of that. And I don't mean that they are like giving you a lot of advice, because that can be frustrating too, right? Because that is also a thing. For my father, for example, if I tell something to my father, then which is involving an emotion for me, then he will always try to help me, right? It's a very good thing to do, obviously, but he will always try to give me advice, or like, you have to do it like this, or why don't you do it like that? And like, yes, I know that he wants to help me, but at the same time, he does not really acknowledge my emotions, which usually involve some sort of fear or anxiety. And because he says, yeah, well, why don't you do it like that? Like, why do you make such a big problem out of it? That is not acknowledging my fear. And then I feel like I cannot talk to him about this because he does not acknowledge me. And like, I feel stupid, or I feel like downgraded by this, because I cannot be who I am. It's not good. That is how it feels to me. So it can be like that too. But if you have a friend who is like more like understanding and acknowledging it, that is really good. Then go and see if you can talk to that friend more often, especially when you're having this depressive state of mind during your eating disorder, which is a very common thing. Another way is journaling. And I know it sounds cliche again. Wow, journaling, and there's like such a hype going on about journaling and like making all these lovely, cute things in this bullet point book. What is it called? A bullet journal or something? And personally, I cannot do that, because these books are always so pretty, you know, like the cover is really pretty, and then you look online and you're like, oh, journal ideas. Then they have like this very organized or neatly drawn and written things, and I'm like, okay, first of all, I don't have time for that. Second of all, I don't have a lot of inspiration for that either. And thirdly, I am a perfectionist, and most people with eating disorder are perfectionists, and for us it's really hard to like just doodle something in your like notebook and the hope that you don't ruin it, and otherwise it will take a lot of time. And that's not the point of your journal, right? It's the point of your journal is that you write down your thoughts and your what happened in your day and your feelings and whatever, maybe your planner, whatever you want to do. But I cannot use like sketchbooks or things that are designed to draw in. I cannot use them because I feel like I'm going to screw it up. Like I'm gonna draw something stupid, and then I've ruined my beautiful sketchbook. I've ruined my beautiful notebook, and now it's not pretty anymore. So, but if you like to do that, go ahead and do that. If you're already doing it, great. I love it. I love the work. But for me, it's not working. And maybe for you, it's also not working. So what I do is I just take, do I have it here? I have multiple of those things. I don't know what this is called. Just a normal, plain thing, and I just keep it like this. Like I don't care about the cover. I don't care. And it's very ugly, and my handwriting is just as ugly. Like this looks like, I don't know, a child written this thing, right? It is crazy, but it doesn't matter because it's already ugly. I can be and write ugly things and draw ugly things and whatever. I can do whatever I want. And that's important because it's not about being clean and neat. It's about writing your thoughts down. And writing your thoughts down should be an unconscious thing, right? We should not like want to do it perfect. I want to write a very good story about what I've done in my day or whatever. No, that's not the point. Journaling, especially if you want to like use the journaling as a way to meet the needs, your emotional needs, and like process emotional things or feelings, then it should not be a very heavy task. It should be something that you can do freely, right? And also very important, judgment free of judgments, okay? And if we're perfectionists, we are constantly judging ourselves. So if we're trying to be perfect, we're not going to be free to let our thoughts flow onto the paper, and that's what we want. So journaling, write down everything that's in your mind, just on the paper, it really helped me a lot, especially during my recovery, because there's a lot of things going on in your mind, a lot of things going on, like a lot of fears, and journaling can help to make your thoughts, your unconscious thought patterns, which are mostly negative, uncover them, make them conscious, and once they're conscious, you can do something about it. But that's another video. I've already done a video about that in the past. I will maybe upload it again, but if you want. I will go to the next step because it's, oh yeah, right. Another way to like start looking for ways to meet your own emotional needs is to do some self-care. And what I mean with that, because self-care is also like such a hyped word these days, but I mean self-care, what I mean with that is that you start to learn to recognize and become aware of your feelings and your physical cues of your body. And then once you're aware, which can be done with the journaling, this can help you become aware of your physical and mental feeling cues, things, sensations in your body and in your mind. Then the next step to do is act on them properly. Like, okay, I can like go back to the hunger cues. Okay, as a child, if I was hungry and I could not eat, well, then I just have to ignore them, right? But that's not good for you. Eventually, your body is telling you it needs food for a reason. It needs energy to survive, and you're going to neglect that. That's not self-care. That is stupid. And yes, you could not eat in that moment because you're a child and you don't have any right to eat at that time. I don't know. But now you're older and you have the control and the power to do that. Okay, so if you feel a hunger cue, for example, the way of self-care is that you react on it. You acknowledge it. You say, oh, I feel hungry. I acknowledge that I'm hungry and I'm going to give myself some food because I need it. I'm gonna take care of myself and I'm gonna be like nice to myself by responding to this cue. And then that way you can learn your body. You can learn your body. This goes back to the trust video. This way you can learn your body, that your body can trust you as well. And it does not only have to be about hunger cues, but also emotionally. Like, if you're feeling sad, don't like pull it down. Like, don't try to act cool, or like don't like slide it off or whatever. Acknowledge it. Like, okay, be aware of the feeling. Okay, I feel sad. Okay, acknowledge it. Okay, I'm sad. That's okay. I can be sad. It's okay to be sad. I don't have to do anything with it. I don't have to fight it. I can just sit with it. And if there's anything I need, like, ask yourself, is there anything I need to do for myself to, I don't know, there can be a cause for your sadness, which you have to, respond to. Like, for example, the movie. If you're watching this sad movie and you're like, I don't want to see this movie, well, then shut that movie down. You know, you're not gonna like pain yourself and like, you know, torture yourself by making yourself watch this video to the end because I chose it and now I have to sit with it to the end. Sink with the go down with the ship. I don't know. No, so address the need, okay, yourself, this way. That's what I mean with self-care. Okay, real quick. Okay, this is not gonna be real quick, I know, but like I already mentioned it before in this video, but there's a chance that if your caretaker is emotionally unavailable, that you will become emotionally unavailable as well. Like, you will have difficulty to express your emotions, or you might not have learned how to talk about your emotions because caretakers don't talk about it, right? So you might have difficulty to express your emotions, and this problem will be bigger if you are in a numb state. Like if you have anorexia or you have severe underweight, your body will shut down your emotions and you will become emotionally numb, or you will suffer emotional numbness, okay? Which at the same time can also be a coping mechanism to like shut down the emotions. Maybe because negative emotions there's a very like negative stigma about down emotions, like fears or sadness or anger. Maybe your emotionally unavailable caretakers have given you some sort of signals that said that, oh, you showing your negative emotions is not a good thing, so better hide them. Then maybe you feel like overwhelmed with your negative emotions and you feel extra bad. Like you also get the guilt with it, like, oh no, I should not feel these emotions because then something bad happens, I don't know. Then this emotional numbness can also be a coping mechanism, because if you're emotionally numb, you're not gonna feel them. You're not gonna feel the negative emotions. So you also don't have to show them to your parents or caretakers, and they will also not like respond in that way, which is not very a nice way to do. Sorry. Why does this happen? So the problem here that I want to address is that it is really hard to feel and talk about your emotions, especially if you're not recovered yet. So, like I said before, with the start looking for ways to meet your emotional needs part, we want to become more aware of our body, right? And we want to become more in tune with our body, and this in turn will also affect the trust in your body. But this is a process that goes hand in hand with your weight gain journey. Why? Because, like I said, you are shut down, and for your body to start working again, you have to give yourself energy. Otherwise, it cannot start the system, it's shut down for a reason, because there is no energy. So you have to give yourself energy. So it has to go hand in hand. But like I said, with the trusting, in the trusting video, if you do the right mental training in combination with the physical, also the eating, it will work. And but it's also important, a very, very important thing, that while you're doing this, while you're trying to be more conscious and more aware of your body sensations, it is very important that you create a safe environment to do so. Because if you're around your unavailable parents, and they will still have the same reaction, even if you're underweight, they're still not gonna be tolerating you to cry, maybe a little bit more, but in the end, you're recovering in this state. So in the end, they will maybe not care about that anymore. And then, what's going on. So we have to create this very safe environment where you can express your emotions without judgment, and that you can accept them and acknowledge them and act upon them, like I said, with the self-care. I already said that. Yeah, and in the end, this will all lead to the oh my god, improved relation with your body, the improved trust in your body. Yeah, and it will also support independency, because now you can take care of yourself emotionally, because you have created this way of dealing with your own emotions by becoming aware of them, acknowledging them, accepting them, sitting with them, and taking care of the needs yourself. So, last step that I want to discuss is that I want to recommend you to recognize that if this always is the case for you, that you do not need your caretaker's attention all the time, okay? You do not need the physical or the emotional support now that you can give it yourself, or you can find it in other people. Even you can choose your surrounding people. You can choose the people you surround yourself with yourself, and you can now that you've become conscious about it, you can now go look for people who can give this to you, give this need to you. Okay, so you do not rely on the caretaker anymore that much. And if it's necessary, you can try and let yourself grieve. Okay, grief. There is something called ambiguous grief, and this is a grief that is not talked about a lot, but there is a very interesting video about that. You can look for it, like ambiguous ambiguous grief in YouTube. You will find it. But it's a grief about a loss of something that was never your possession. So you have grief about things like someone died, but that was someone who was in your possession, right? But you can also have grief about things that you've never had. For example, you had a dream of becoming, I don't know, an actor or something. And later in your life, you've discovered that, well, I'm never gonna reach this goal. I'm never gonna be an actor. Maybe you've become an actor, but you only get like the super small, minor things, and you're almost not making enough money to survive. And you, at some point, you realize, okay, I'm never gonna, like, it's not possible for me to get there or whatever. I'm not going to fulfill my dreams before I die. That is also a form of grief, a loss of something that you thought or wished you had. And this can also be the love or the attention of a caretaker that you thought you had or that you wished you had because you need it. But it turns out it is not there, and you don't know if it's going to be there someday, right? So acknowledge that it can hurt to find out that it is this way. And if you need to grieve about it, really grieve about it. And it was really helpful to watch the video I mentioned. And next thing is, don't try to, I also recommend you to try to understand the situation of your parents, because people do not get emotionally unavailable just because they want to, okay? So just as for you, there might be a reason for you to have become emotionally unavailable. If that's the case, there's also a reason for your parents. And probably it's not a nice reason. Maybe they have been, like I said, maybe they had unavailable parents themselves, and they have never recognized that, and never felt the need to change it, but it will also give them a lot of problems in their own life. So just be kind and patient with them, and don't judge them for that. But I trust you one. So I hope you found this video helpful. And I hope to see you again in my next video. If you have any questions, let me know. I'm available to answer them. And thank you so much again, and see you later. Bye.